What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Oh my goodness. Marvel Generations. Man, dude, this story is actually really fun. It's really cool. The one thing about Generations, for those of you guys who are new to the Marvel landscape at the moment, Marvel's initiating something called Legacy, which is basically where they're bringing back a lot of the older characters that seem to basically exist side by side with new characters, which is kind of cool. Like Riri Williams is one of my favorite characters that's out there right now. Definitely Amadeus Cho Hulk, because it's just like a super smart Hulk. The idea here is that this is designed to find this sort of middle ground between those that don't want things to change, want their classic superheroes to stay, and those that want new superheroes. And so what this does is it kind of brings like Greg Pak's view of the Incredible Hulk kind of all the way back to really the very beginning. Now, the funny thing about this is that Greg Pak, I would say, is probably one of the most interesting writers when it came to the Incredible Hulk. I don't know if he'd be the most important, just because there were writers before him that established some pretty important things. Peter David, guys like that established the idea, or really built on the idea that Bruce Banner, I guess the Incredible Hulk personality, emerged as a result of all the abuse that Bruce Banner suffered when he was a kid at the hands of his father. But with Greg Pak, he basically took the Incredible Hulk concept as we knew him, and he basically just built on the Incredible Hulk smashing stuff idea. And so that's where the original Planet Hulk, that's where World War Hulk, all that stuff, that's where it really all just kind of came in together to create this giant Hulk mythos. So it's really one of the coolest runs in recent years. So I would argue, if anybody is best suited to write a Marvel Generation story on the Incredible Hulk, it's probably Greg Pak, since he's been one of the most influential writers in recent years. But the other thing about this is that this simply just picks up with Amadeus Cho Hulk. Now, we don't know how he got here. That explanation is never really given to us. The idea is that it gives us a little bit of an explanation about his character, but only insofar that he had basically cured, quote unquote, Bruce Banner of the Incredible Hulk by absorbing the Incredible Hulk essence into himself, and then in turn becoming the Hulk. Now, this is kind of a cool thing, is because when Amadeus Cho did that, it wasn't like Greg Pak just kind of pulled it out of nowhere. A precedence had been set in a multitude of different ways. Case in point, there's been stories where Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk have been split. There's been times where, like during the Onslaught saga, for example, where Jean Grey established that Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk are indeed two different personas living in the same body. One can be suppressed and the other can reign supreme. We've seen stories like World War Hulk where both of their ideals align and the Incredible Hulk just goes absolutely berserk on the Earth superhero. So it's not really a new thing. This is kind of an established thing. The funny thing about this is that getting into it, what ends up happening is that with Amadeus Cho just kind of being here, not really knowing exactly where he is, he ends up stumbling into the Incredible Hulk, just being attacked by the armies of General Thunderbolt Ross. Now again, Marvel Generations exists for the purpose of basically giving new readers kind of a jumping on point. And what I mean by that is with the Incredible Hulk, especially with his character, a lot of people know the concept of the Hulk, which is to say Bruce Banner gets angry and he becomes the Hulk. But the nuanced aspects of him are things that are just kind of left out there that they're not 100% sure about. General Thunderbolt Ross always chasing after the Incredible Hulk. That's kind of been a hallmark of his character, different things like that. But again, this is really kind of cool because this again focuses on seeing the world of the Incredible Hulk through the eyes of Banner as Amadeus Cho is watching it unfold. Now, the reason why this is kind of important is because Amadeus Cho was a relatively new character in Marvel Comics. I mean, he's not super old. He hasn't been around for like 30 years. He's been around for a pretty good chunk of time. But with Amadeus Cho, he was very much his own character. He was really just kind of a character who was out there that existed alongside the Incredible Hulk. He was really one of the only people the Incredible Hulk actually was friends with in a lot of different ways outside of Rick Jones. And so it made sense that there would be a natural transition, that if Bruce Banner was going to go away, Amadeus Cho would take his place. And so the result is that with Amadeus Cho watching these events unfold, really for the first time, he's experiencing what it's like to see Bruce Banner as the Hulk, as a Hulk himself. And that's why this is kind of important, because it's one thing to see the idea of Hulk freaking out when you're Amadeus Cho and you're just a normal guy. It's another to walk in his shoes. And that's really the crux of this whole story. Now, a funny moment here is that when the Incredible Hulk's lashing out, when the Incredible Hulk's freaking out, Amadeus Cho starts to kind of analyze and look around and say, okay, cool, they're unmanned. We can go ahead and attack them. You can go ahead. You don't have to worry about holding back. And the Hulk's response was like, well, I wasn't going to hold back anyway. Whether they were manned or unmanned, they were all going to get destroyed. So it's kind of funny. I mean, this is kind of the cool thing here, because this is like classic Bruce Banner Hulk, because that's the nature of his character, right? Like, people don't usually read the Incredible Hulk. Like, when they go pick up an Incredible Hulk story, they don't necessarily read Bruce Banner Hulk for the purpose of seeing Bruce Banner Hulk as a super intelligent guy. They read Amadeus Cho Hulk for that. When it comes to Bruce Banner Hulk, they just want to see him smash stuff. Now, of course, this inevitably leads to the Incredible Hulk attempting to attack civilians. And that's the difference here, is because Amadeus Cho, as a member of the Champions, as a superhero looks to the Incredible Hulk ideology as a means to an end. Where Bruce Banner looked at the Incredible Hulk and simply said, well, I mean, this is just kind of a curse that I'm stuck with and I can't control it. Amadeus Cho can control his transformations. And so the Incredible Hulk, or at least the Hulk concept when it belongs to Cho, is tantamount to like a shovel or a pitchfork. It's a tool to achieve a goal. And so for him, going through and just attacking civilians, whether they're attacking the Hulk or not, is not okay because all lives are important. Now, the idea here is that with Amadeus Cho basically stopping Hulk, it leads to the two of them fighting one another. Now, this is kind of interesting here because with Amadeus Cho, he is not on par with classic Banner Hulk. With classic Banner Hulk, it's a totally separate mindset. And so for him, it's just, he's gonna keep fighting until he wins. He'll just keep getting angrier and angrier and angrier until he wins. The only exception to that is if the Hulk is fighting a being that's so incredibly powerful that he can just immediately overcome the Incredible Hulk before he can get angry enough to withstand that foe's physical attacks, or if that person is just some universal construct that would just phase the Hulk out of existence or something along those lines. With Amadeus Cho, he's not on that level. His unlimited strength, he's not quite where Savage Hulk, Classic Banner Hulk, whatever you want to call him, where we're traditionally used to seeing him. And so on the whole, Amadeus Cho is able to hold his own to a degree, but ultimately the Incredible Hulk really just keeps coming and coming and coming. Now, of course, this leads to a stalemate for the most part with regards to Amadeus Cho just kind of fighting him to the point where he's like, all right, look, I'm not going to attack you anymore. Now, what this does is it kind of brings into sharp relief the nature of the Hulk, because while the Hulk is a force of nature in a lot of different ways, it doesn't mean that he's simply going to attack with no real cause. And if the threat is basically subdued, the Hulk will chill out. At the same time, this is not tried and true Savage Hulk. And the difference here is that the Incredible Hulk has a lot of different personas, a lot of different concepts to his character, a lot of different mindsets. There's Professor Hulk, which is basically a genius version of the Incredible Hulk. There's World War Hulk, who's at his most powerful form, but capable of rational thought. This is a more toned down version. Savage Hulk is just Hulk who's just raging out, just absolutely losing his mind. He can't really form complex sentences. He's really more of just like a simple creature that just has an incredible amount of strength, as opposed to a guy with any real measure of thought. But what ends up happening is that in this time where this stalemate takes place, they both basically end up, powering down, for a lack of a better word. Now remember, Amadeus Cho, as it stands right now in this story, is recollecting the events of Civil War II. It's more or less takes place, or at least it seems to take place, in the present day with regards to Amadeus Cho. The problem with this is that we're not given a time frame. Because of the fact that Amadeus Cho just showed up here, and because Bruce Banner doesn't know who he is, the implication is that maybe Amadeus Cho was thrown into the past. Now the reason why this sort of works is because, remember, Generations is designed to basically follow up to Secret Empire, but Secret Empire is not finished yet. Marvel just kind of had to throw these out there for the sake of just getting numbers up and, getting the sales going and all that kind of good stuff, keeping interest in Marvel Comics. So we don't really know exactly how it is that Secret Empire will lead into Legacy, Generations, that kind of a thing. We just know that it will. Now, most likely in like Legacy or something along those lines, there will basically be a point whereby it'll explain how it is that Amadeus Cho got here in the first place. But at the very least, we can just kind of take this up, chalk it with a grain of salt and say, okay, maybe he's in the past. If Bruce Banner doesn't know who he is and Bruce Banner's currently alive, it makes sense that this is sometime in the past. Because remember, during the events of Civil War II, Hawkeye had basically killed Bruce Banner at the request of Banner himself when Hawkeye was warned that if Banner ever hulks out, to basically take the measure of killing him. And so the result is that Amadeus Cho is kind of wrestling with this idea. Do I tell Bruce Banner that he's going to die? But the thing about this is that this leads into a really important discussion between Bruce Banner and Amadeus Cho. And what this does is it sets the stage for the future of the Incredible Hulk going into Generations and, whatever it is that comes after that. What ends up happening here is Banner sits down and basically gives Cho his perspective of the Hulk in terms of how he views the Hulk, how he views himself in relation to the Hulk, what he recalls about his life, different things like that. Now, this whole little bit of an explanation regarding Bruce Banner's father beating him, with regards to Bruce Banner's father beating his mother and then in turn killing the mother of Bruce Banner, again, that goes all the way back to the old school origin of Bruce Banner himself. This has long since been established. But what ends up happening here is that Bruce Banner basically makes the case that the Incredible Hulk is one of the most destructive forces in existence. And indeed he is. As the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner is terrified of what he could do. I mean, we saw with World War Hulk that if the Incredible Hulk got angry enough and he stomped on the ground, he shook the entirety of the eastern seaboard. Is it that far out of the realm of belief to really kind of assume the Incredible Hulk could destroy the world? If the Incredible Hulk is at his absolute peak. Who's going to be able to bring him down? In World War Hulk, it was a combination of Tony Stark's satellites and the Sentry. But if the Hulk continued to keep getting angrier and angrier and angrier, no one would be able to stand in his way. And so again, this is what Bruce Banner is afraid of. The Incredible Hulk is always just one heartbeat away from laying waste to everything they care about. Now, the funny thing about this is that in the middle of their discussion, this small city is basically set upon by this giant beast thing, and of course they end up beating it. It's kind of a weird turn to take in this story, but Greg Pak does that a lot, where he's just kind of like, hey, here's something interesting, and then here's a weird thing out of nowhere. But in the middle of all this, the reason why this is kind of important is because Amadeus Cho is both being attacked by this massive monster with Bruce Banner trying to escort people out, and at the same time being attacked by the forces of General Thunderbolt Ross. He's literally being hit on all sides. And in this moment, Amadeus Cho basically cuts loose and then just loses it. And when he does, he effectively becomes Savage Hulk. Now, this is a blink of an eye moment. It happens so fast that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. And so with regards to this, what ends up happening is Bruce Banner turns back into the Incredible Hulk, or the Incredible Hulk reemerges, and the two of them begin engaging in a conflict again. Now, this is the other side of the Incredible Hulk. With Amadeus Cho able to control his transformations, the desire of Bruce Banner was to figure out how to do that. If he could control his transformations, he could decide when the Incredible Hulk can and cannot come out. Because remember, the Incredible Hulk just kind of pops up, sometimes at the most inopportune times, sometimes at the most opportune times. But with the Incredible Hulk basically taunting him, saying, hey, look, you've got a monster inside of you, whether you know it or not, but you have no real genuine answers. You've got no legitimate explanations on how to solve this quagmire. He ends up just kind of transforming in, back into Bruce Banner, and Bruce Banner continues the discussion in saying, yes, Amadeus Cho is a good kid. Yes, Amadeus Cho wants to do the right thing, but Bruce Banner started out the same way. When Bruce Banner first realized that he was becoming the Incredible Hulk, this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde scenario, for him, it was the desire to control and contain the Incredible Hulk and only ever let him out when the Hulk was needed, when the Avengers were fighting or something along those lines. But as time progressed, the Incredible Hulk would just keep popping up, and it became clear very, very fast, the Incredible Hulk is his own personality, that he just kind of comes out and then does what he wants to. Now again, a lot of this is circumstance, but with this statement, what Bruce Banner says is the power that we possess is an incredibly destructive force. We are basically jailers, we're prison guards, we're not really superheroes. And that's true. That's kind of the cool thing about this. That was always the biggest fear. Will the Incredible Hulk come out? And if he does, what will happen? That was the basis behind the entire Planet Hulk event in the first place. The Illuminati, these self-proclaimed protectors of the world, they had basically all come together and said, hey, look, we need to protect the Earth from the Incredible Hulk. And if we cannot separate Banner and the Hulk, then we'll just get rid of them both. And they sent them off world. Now, of course, this led into the whole Planet Hulk story itself, but that highlights the very nature of this story kind of coming full circle in the sense that the Incredible Hulk's too unpredictable. The Incredible Hulk is too dangerous, and the Incredible Hulk is too powerful to just be assumed to be a benign entity. And so the warning sign that Bruce Banner gives to Amadeus Cho, really the warning he gives off here, is that a time is going to come. Something's going to take place when Amadeus Cho is going to lose control. And when he does, this Incredible Hulk persona, this Cho Hulk that he's been running around as for a while, is going to be replaced, and it's going to become Savage Hulk. And when it does, this Savage Hulk is going to take on its own personality. It's going to take on its own role. And the result is going to lead into Amadeus Cho basically just kind of becoming the very thing he doesn't want to be. And so again, this sets the stage for this sort of coming together of these two different iterations of these characters. Bruce Banner warning Amadeus Cho, trying to guide him in the right direction, and Amadeus Cho trying to make sure he does not become this Savage Hulk that he's so terrified of. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. This continues, I believe, in the Incredible Hulk number 709, which is weird. I'll explain Marvel Legacy numbering at some point. Actually, you know what? We can do it here. All this really means when it comes to legacy numbering is that with characters like the Incredible Hulk, there was the original Incredible Hulk 1 through 6, and then he's just had different solo series. The legacy numbering simply means that with issue number 709, it just means that overall, there have been 708 issues of the Incredible Hulk. The one coming out after this will be issue number 709. That's all that means when it comes to legacy numbering. Not confusing at all, pretty simple to follow if you've been reading comics. I kind of wish they'd taken it back to the day. What they used to do, they did it with the Fantastic Four, they did it with Thor. What they used to do is you would go pick up those old comics and it would be like Thor, it would be issue 22/206. And what that would mean is that it's the 22nd issue of the current run, but the 206th issue overall. I mean, those numbers I'm just kind of pulling out of thin air, but you guys understand what I'm saying. I kind of wish they'd done that. That I think would have been a smarter road to take, just because they're publishing so many comics with legacy numbering. But nonetheless, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end, and I will catch you all later. Peace.